The $2 million contract you signed without reading and called it I do. Picture this. You spent 10 years building a company, growing it, protecting it, finally turning a real profit. Then one afternoon, you bring on a partner, and without a single background check, without reading a resume, without even glancing at a credit report, you hand them 50% of everything you own, 50% of everything you will ever build for the rest of your life, and unrestricted access to the account where you keep it all. You agree that if they walk away tomorrow, for any reason or no reason at all, they can take half the cash, half the value, and possibly a paycheck from you for years afterward. If you did this in business, your board would fire you before lunch. Investors would call you reckless. And yet, millions of people sign this exact deal every single year. We just don't call it merger. We call it marriage. We obsess over expense ratios and portfolio diversification, agonizing over 0.5% in fees, while completely ignoring the single legal contract capable of destroying more wealth in one afternoon than a stock market crash could destroy in a decade. Today, we're taking the romance out of the equation, just for a few minutes, and looking at marriage through the cold, unforgiving lens of forensic accounting. Here's the truth nobody mentions at the engagement party. In the eyes of the law, marriage isn't a union of souls. It is a merger of two economic entities. The moment you say, I do, you trigger a cascade of tax codes, property laws, and liability statutes that permanently bind you to another person's financial behavior. People will spend more time reading the terms and conditions on a phone update than they spend understanding the legal weight of a marriage license. They walk in blind, led by oxytocin, completely blind to the balance sheet. And that blindness is where the wealth destruction begins. We're taught that opposites attract. Maybe that's true for hobbies, for humor, for the songs you both like. But financially, opposites don't attract. They collide. If you're a saver, someone wired for security through liquidity and compounding, and you marry a spender, someone wired to chase the dopamine of consumption, you haven't entered a partnership. You've entered a slow war of attrition. And here's the math that proves it. Say you're disciplined. You save $20,000 a year. Over 30 years at 8% growth, that becomes just over $2 million. You're a millionaire on paper and in reality. Now marry someone who genuinely believes money exists to be spent. Not reckless, not addicted, just consistently drawn to nicer things. A new car lease every 3 years. Slightly more expensive vacations. Lunch out most days. Gifts for everyone, every occasion. On their own, none of these decisions look dangerous. Combined, they quietly drain $15,000 a year from your household. Your savings rate collapses from $20,000 to $5,000. Run that same 30-year projection and you land at roughly $500,000, not $2 million. The difference, $1.5 million, didn't vanish in a divorce court. It vanished one small purchase at a time, while you filled a bucket someone else was quietly drilling holes into. And the psychological cost is just as brutal as the financial one. You become the villain of your own household, the one who says no. Every money conversation turns into a fight until eventually you stop having them and you surrender to a smaller version of the life you were building. But the slow bleed is the merciful outcome, because the alternative is far worse. Divorce isn't a slow leak. It's a detonation. The failure rate for first marriages sits near 40 to 50%, and it climbs for second and third marriages. Translate that into investment terms for a moment. Imagine an asset with a 50% chance of steady 10% annual growth and a 50% chance of instantly losing half its value. No serious investor would touch that. Yet we stake our entire financial lives on it, without a second thought. When a marriage ends, the efficiency you built together disappears instantly. Two incomes were funding one household, one rent payment, one electric bill, one internet connection. Split that household in half, and your combined overhead doesn't decrease, it multiplies. And that's before a single asset is actually divided. Let's run the real numbers. A couple with a net worth of $500,000 divorces. Split evenly, that's $250,000 each. Except legal fees for a contested divorce routinely run $50,000 to $70,000 per person. So your $250,000 shrinks toward $200,000. Then the house sells, and realtor commissions alone eat another 6% before closing costs and moving expenses take their bite. Then come the tax penalties from cashing out retirement accounts or selling investments at the wrong moment just to satisfy a settlement. By the time the dust settles, a divorce can quietly destroy 60 to 70% of your purchasing power. You're not starting over from zero. You're starting over from negative 10 years older with a fraction of the time left to compound your way back. And we haven't even mentioned alimony or child support, the fixed monthly obligations that follow the higher earner for years, sometimes decades, legally binding you to fund a lifestyle for a partnership that no longer exists. I've seen professionals earning $200,000 a year living in studio apartments eating instant noodles because after taxes, alimony, and support, what's left barely clears the poverty line. They're generating wealth. They're just not the one keeping it. Now, you might think this sounds cynical, that marriage should be about love, not spreadsheets. And it should be. But financial stress is consistently cited as one of the leading causes of divorce. Money isn't separate from love. It's the soil love either grows in or dies in. And here's the twist nobody expects. Treating marriage like a serious financial decision before the wedding doesn't kill the romance. It protects it. When two people are genuinely aligned on money, they stop fighting about the past and start building the future together. This brings us to something darker: financial infidelity. Hiding debt, hiding spending, lying about balances. Studies suggest around 40% of Americans have done exactly this to a partner. And in most states, you're legally exposed to your spouse's secret debt. A hidden credit card, a gambling habit, a shopping addiction, and suddenly there's a lien on assets you thought were safe simply because you were legally tethered to someone else's decisions. So how do you actually protect yourself before signing this contract? First, real financial vetting. You'd never hire a business partner without seeing their track record, so don't marry one without seeing theirs. Have the uncomfortable money conversation before the engagement, not after. Look at their credit history, their debt, their spending instincts. Ask yourself honestly, does this person treat debt as a tool or as a lifestyle? Do they avoid opening mail because they're afraid of what's inside? These aren't quirks. They're structural warning signs, and you cannot love someone into becoming financially responsible if they don't want to be. Second, and this one carries an unfair stigma, the prenuptial agreement. People assume prenups are for the wealthy or for people already planning to fail. That's backwards. A prenup is simply insurance. You don't buy insurance because you expect disaster. You buy it because the risk exists. A prenup forces the hardest conversations to happen while you still like each other, not while a lawyer is billing you by the hour. If your partner refuses to even discuss one, that itself is information. Here's the part that flips the entire narrative, though. Get this right, and marriage becomes the single greatest wealth-building tool available to the average person. Two aligned earners, sharing rent, splitting overhead, doubling their tax-advantaged retirement space, holding each other accountable when temptation to overspend creeps in. A financially aligned marriage isn't just stable, it's a compounding machine that outperforms almost anything on Wall Street. The goal was never to avoid marriage. The goal is to avoid a bad merger. So if you're single, put financial alignment on the same list as kindness and chemistry, because it will determine your life just as much as either one. If you're already partnered, stop avoiding the conversation you've been dreading. Ask directly what wealth actually means to them, and listen carefully to the answer. And if you're already married and recognize the spending pattern described here, don't wait for it to fix itself. Automate your savings before it ever touches a joint account, and build guardrails now, because hope was never a financial strategy. Choose your partner the way you'd choose your biggest investment, because that's exactly what they are. A broken heart eventually heals. A broken retirement account rarely does.